Hello, we're here today at the Van Loon Museum with TonkoGrever, who is the assistant curator here. Tonko, could you tell me a little about the history of this beautiful house?
The house itself was built in the 17th century. The first person who lived here was Ferdinand Bol. He was a very successful pupil of Rembrandt, so he could afford to live in a large house on the newer areas of the city in his time. But the house itself, the interiors, are all in the 18th century, Rococo, and later on to the Neoclassicism style. But it's a very good example of a large double, as we call it here in Holland, canal house. And it's a good survived example with very nice furniture still in. I mean, the built-in furniture with the chimney pieces, and it gives you a good impression of the house if you see the house itself. And we've got a long list of important people who lived in here, but we're very glad that Ferdinand Bol was the first person who lived here in the house. And Ferdinand Bol was living here because he was renting the house with a coach house, which is the back of the garden. But when he rented the place, the coach house was not finished yet. So he put a lawsuit against the owner of the house because he was renting the place. And of course, it's a good Dutchman because he wanted to have a lower rent. And that's also the reason that we know the architect of the house, which was Adrian Dorstman, I think the house is actually in the complete chain of architecture, the outside of the house. It's an important piece in the development from the early canal house style to a more severe style, which became popular at the end of the 17th century. But from the inside, as we found out during the restorations of the house, it's told that there are no traces from the 17th century. It's all in 18th century from the inside of the house. And it's to make it, I think, to say itself, or you can find them otherwise, but the staircase of the house is the most spectacular thing, and that is due to Mr. Van Hagen. Mr. Van Hagen, he was a mid-18th century owner of the house, and I think he totally took away the interior of the house and renovated the place in the 18th century style, and he totally renewed the staircase, and I think it's the most spectacular staircase in the Amsterdam Canalside Mansion. In all the houses like this, you have stories about the owners, and in this house the story goes that Mr. Van Loon discovered and found out suddenly that Mr. Van Hagen has written his name into the balustrade. If you look carefully, then you can discover them, because it's very difficult to see. If you see one letter, then you can make the name out of it, and if you don't see anything, then you can't forget it to see the name of Mr. Van Hagen and also the name of his wife, Trip. The house is very restored in the 60s. Of course, there were many additions made in the 19th century, and they all have been removed during the restoration to give good impression of an 18th century house. And I think it's well done, and still I think it's considered as a good restoration to the house.
Now, you've mentioned to me that this was really a museum that included the history of a house and the history of a family. Now, what is the family?
I think the history of the family of the house, it's called the Van Loon Museum, Van Loon House, people call it. It's also the history, the interior and the things that are in the house are all from the Van Loon family. The Van Loon family bought this house in 1883, so that's more than a century ago. But they're really the family who turned this house into a museum, and their belongings and their ancestral things and heritage you can see in the house. And which most spectacular thing they owned is a very large collection of family portraits, which is, I think, one of the largest and one of the most impressive collections here in Holland available. We have of all relatives, we have at least a portrait. And a few of them, or some of them, we also have more portraits, so you can see them growing older and becoming old and bald and grey. Which is nice to see. We can really explain the family history to point out by paintings. You can show people this is the father from, that's the brother, the mother. You can see the grandson. You can see who the grandson is married to. And because most of the Amsterdam families are quite close related, you can see also the history of Amsterdam. People who were traders in the 17th century, Eastern with the East, with our colonies, and becoming rich, and in the 18th century they were ruling the city and they were in the local government. So you can really see also the history of Amsterdam. A lot of people you can tell the stories about the history of Amsterdam and the events who were taking place, political events, economical events. And you can point out by showing and pointing out the relatives and the story of the people behind the portraits. And for the rest, the house is decorated with the family furniture, porcelain, silver, which is partly, especially was owned in this house, was here, and also a lot of things are coming from other relatives of the family. That's the reason why is that the family is quite small at the moment. There's just one Van Loon left, so a lot of family relatives gave furniture to the last Mr. Van Loon to be here, to be preserved in this house. So that's, I think, also one of the reasons that the family turned the house into a museum. I think there actually were two reasons. One reason was to open the house for the public. The museum was opened in 1973. It was a time that most of the canal houses were turned into offices. There were less and less houses who were occupied as a living house. Most of them were closed for the public. So Mr. Van Loon wanted to make sure that also people in the future would be able to see a house like this and how life is in a house like this. And of course nowadays it turned into another direction. I mean, most of the offices are turned into houses at the moment, but I think in his age, 1960, 1973, when the museum was opened, there were less and less houses occupied by people. They were all offices. So that was one of the reasons he opened it, and the other reason was to keep together the collection, because in Holland, because of our inheritance system, most of the collections are split up, and they split up any further in the future. And I think the only way to keep them together here in Holland is to turn things into a foundation. Then you make sure that they will be kept together also in the future. And because that's the thing that makes family portraits interesting. If you have the combination, if you have them all, then you can tell the story of the family. And if you've just one painting, that's less interesting. And then you have them all. I mean, then you can explain things, you can tell stories. And if you don't have them together, they have less meaning than.
What is the origin of the wealth of the Van Loon family?
In the beginning, because they were trading, I mean, they were coming from the south of Holland, where they had a watermill in the medieval times. You can still see that sign also in their family coat of arms. 3 crosses standing from a watermill they possessed in the medieval times. But then they went to Rotterdam, where they were fishermen. They had fishing ships, and from the fishing ships, I think Holland turned into a marine nation. The fisher ships were trading further and further, And then I think we got in conflict with the Spanish and with the English, but we were very good in it. And we were one of the reasons we were becoming good in it, that we were the government founded a company for trading, and that company was led by 17 persons. I mean, every city had its own department, and Rotterdam had a department, and the Rotterdam department was founded by Van Loon. But the Van Loons were clever enough to think that Rotterdam would become less important than Amsterdam. So they moved to Amsterdam, and also here they were in the head of the department of that company, our Eastern Trading Company. And because there were ships tradings, there were ship insurances in that, but also trading itself, and they had stocks in the trading company. And I think that was the origin of the wealth of the family. And then, because they became wealthy, they did several good marriages into all the families in Amsterdam and other families to get also power and to keep powerful things. Then you need powerful contacts to keep powerful.
And their coat of arms changed at some point, reflecting this new shipping thing, huh? From the watermills?
Yes, I mean, the coat of arms is now different looking than it from in the past. I think it first appeared around 1610, 1620, that they added two black hats into their coat of arms. So it's a lot of people are very shocked if they see the first time they see the family coat of arms. They think immediately of slave trade. It's a thing I suppose to be ashamed of. It would be if it would be. So the Van Loon family spent some investigation into the history of their coat of arms, and they found out that they were never in slave trade, because the slave trade was based to the west, and they were trading with the east, and the Eastern Trading Company had nothing to do with the slave trade. But there were black persons in Holland at the time in the 17th century. They were there, and they were a symbol of status. They were standing at the back of the coach when the family was going out. And I think that's also the reason why they added it to the family coat of arms as a symbol of status. And hopefully that's the reason that they did it. Otherwise, I think you have a problem.
And so excuse me, the furnishings that we find around the house here are basically from the Van Loon family.
I would say half of it is from the Van Loon family, originally from the Van Loon family. But they are also collected in this century, collected furniture. I think that's the rest of the furniture which is displayed over here. So it's partly originally from this house, and other things are bought for the house and also bought when it was turned into a museum. I mean, new things were added. If you're going to redecorate a house, you can imagine yourself then you willing to buy other things because you have new ideas and you want to change. And but let's say I think it's the furniture you can best describe is it's the family choice. I mean, we as a museum don't make choices in the furniture. It's the family who makes the choices in what kind of furniture is standing here, and they bring in furniture, and also sometimes they buy furniture in their opinion and in their taste. So I think you can still say that's the Van Loon furniture which is displayed over here.
Now, you have a special show upstairs right now. Is this something that you often have here, or is this a rare thing? And what is the show?
I think nowadays, as a museum, I think it's one of the functions of a museum is to change things and let other things show to the public. We don't have that often exhibitions. It's not the function of our museum. Our main function is to preserve the house in the condition it is as now, and maybe to improve the condition. Exhibition is not our main aim. We're not exhibition hall. We don't need to have an exhibition. But this exhibition, at the moment we have an exhibition which was a very rare opportunity. At the moment we have a collection of nearly 70 sculptures by Bologna. It's a private collection from America, from Michael Hall, and there are also sculptures who were really very fitting. They were always has been sculptures for private collectors, and that means it's very, very good for our museum. It's very well fitting into a museum because we are really a private museum. We try to show a private surrounding, and in that surrounding, I think the sculptures are very, very well fitting. And so we're very glad to have it at this moment, at this particular time, because at the Rijksmuseum is a very large exhibition of Adrian de Vries and Bologna, Italian. I mean, he was coming from the northern part of Europe, but he went to Italy, and there Adrian de Vries was partly educated as his workshop. So it's a very good combination to have the large Adrian de Vries sculptures in a large museum as the Rijksmuseum is, and to have this collection of Bologna sculptures, which are very private atmosphere. I mean, there were people there. They look as if you want to have them on your own desk, and they're very well fitting over here in this intimate period rooms we have here.
Now, when can the people come out to this museum, and are you open every day?
During the exhibition, which runs to the 14th of March, we're open all day, from 10 till 5. People can enter from between 10 and 7. People can, and 10 and 5. People can walk around themselves and enjoy the private atmosphere of our museum. So there's no obligated tour people have to take. They can just enjoy and take their time, or do it as quick as they want to.
Okay, Tonko, thank you very much.